The old man in the faded baseball cap was just sweeping the sidewalk, barely noticed by the crowd rushing past the courthouse. Until one morning, a group of angry teens hurled slurs and trash his way. The next day, a black government SUV parked at the edge of the square. Then another. By sunset, 5 were parked in formation. No one knew why, until the mayor came outside and saluted the janitor. Twice. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to like the video. Every morning, just before sunrise, the courthouse square in Elmridge, Tennessee, stirred to life. Delivery trucks rolled by with soft thumps, pigeons cooed from power lines, and the town's unofficial janitor, an old man in worn coveralls and a weathered cap, swept the sidewalk with slow, deliberate strokes. Few people knew his name. Fewer still had ever spoken to him. But he was always there. To most, he was just Pop. No one remembered when he'd started cleaning the square. Some said he'd been doing it since the 90s. Others thought he might have been hired by the city once and just never stopped coming. He didn't ask for money. He didn't answer questions. He swept, picked up trash, and nodded politely to whoever passed by. At 7:30 sharp, he'd step aside for the town workers to begin their day, then vanish into the alley behind the courthouse. Some assumed he lived nearby. Others believed he might be homeless. Nobody knew. One morning, the peace broke. 3 teens in matching varsity jackets, loud with early confidence and energy drinks, strutted into the square. One held a fast food bag and, with a grin, lobbed it toward the trash can. It missed. The old man quietly bent to pick it up. "Leave it," one teen snorted. "That's his job." Pop didn't flinch. He just kept cleaning. But then came the jokes. Mocking his slow walk, his limp, his silence. "Bet he's deaf. Or crazy. My dad says he might be some old ex-con. Probably a loony vet. Too much war. Now he thinks trash is the enemy." Laughter echoed. Pop didn't react. Just kept sweeping. But one of the teens got bolder. He kicked over the trash can. Garbage spilled across the pavement. "Oops," he said, grinning. "Wanna earn your keep, Grandpa?" Something in the old man's hands paused. His eyes met the boy's for the briefest second. Calm. Unshaken. Then he bent down and began cleaning again, one piece at a time. A few early risers across the street witnessed the scene. A woman at the bakery stopped rolling dough. The local judge, sipping coffee in his office window, narrowed his eyes. But no one intervened. Not then. The boys walked away, laughing. The old man finished his work, then disappeared, as always, into the alley. The next day, he didn't show up. And by noon, the mayor's office phone began ringing. The square felt different without him. Cleaner, somehow, but not in a good way. Like a room after someone has moved out. The regulars noticed first. Sandy, the bakery owner, looked twice at the empty patch of pavement where the old man usually swept. Judge Harmon found his coffee less satisfying. Even the pigeons seemed to circle lower, unsure where to land. By midday, the trash bin overflowed. A soda can rolled beneath a bench, and fast food wrappers clung to the bushes like forgotten flags. The maintenance crew had their routine, but it wasn't the same. Pop had always gotten there first, silently, thoroughly, before the city woke. "Maybe he's sick," said the florist's assistant, watching from her shop window. "He's old. Maybe something happened." No one answered. At the courthouse steps, Judge Harmon finally asked the sheriff if they had any information on the man. "Old guy with a broom," the sheriff replied. "Never gave us trouble. We don't even have a last name." "Why?" "Something happened yesterday. 3 teens from the high school were less than respectful." The sheriff frowned. "That a polite way of saying they harassed him?" The judge nodded. "I'll check with the school," the sheriff said. "But we don't have anything on the guy. No complaints. No files. You'd think after all these years." That night, at the edge of town, in a rented trailer tucked behind an old hardware store, a light flicked on. Inside, the old man sat at a small wooden table, flipping through a notebook filled with names and dates. His hands, calloused and veined, moved with practiced care. Next to the notebook sat a folded flag in a triangular frame, dusty but undisturbed. He turned a page, revealing an old photograph, 6 young men in uniform, laughing under a sunlit Afghan sky. He traced one face gently with his finger, then set the book down. In the square, Sandy taped a handwritten sign to her bakery door. "Pop, we miss you." Others followed. The bookstore placed a chair where he used to sit for breaks. Someone brought flowers. The florist assistant left a thermos of coffee. By Friday, the teens had stopped showing up entirely. A teacher confirmed they'd been suspended after a video surfaced blurry footage from a store's security camera showing their mockery, the old man's quiet endurance, and a few shocked witnesses in the background. The school board issued a statement, vague and generic, but the town wasn't satisfied. Someone should say something, Sandy told the local paper. But say what? Asked the reporter. She thought for a moment. Say that we noticed. Say that we care. That Sunday, the mayor walked through the square with his hands behind his back. He paused at the flower-wrapped bench, then turned to his aide. Find out his name, he said. I want to know who he is. Today. The aide hesitated. What if we can't? The mayor didn't answer. Because by then, 4 unmarked black SUVs had parked quietly at the edge of the square. They didn't arrive with sirens. No flashing lights, no announcements. Just 4 identical black SUVs, polished and silent, gliding into place near the courthouse lawn on Sunday morning. By noon, they still hadn't moved. At first, people assumed it was a government meeting. Maybe a senator in town, someone important passing through. But no one entered the courthouse. No press. No entourage. Just stillness. Sheriff Bolton circled once in his patrol car before stepping out and approaching the vehicles cautiously. He tapped on a tinted window. It lowered only halfway. Everything all right here? He asked. The man inside, in a dark suit and crisp white shirt, gave a polite nod. Yes, sir. We're simply waiting. For what? The man didn't blink. For a man who used to sweep this square. The sheriff narrowed his eyes. You got a name? But the window rolled back up without another word. Word of the SUVs spread quickly. Sandy leaned against the bakery window, watching. The florist stood on her stoop, arms crossed. Even the judge came outside, his robes left hanging behind his office door. Who are they? Whispered a passing child. Trouble, muttered an older man. Nothing good comes in black cars that quiet. But the cars just sat there, engines off, doors unopened. Until 2:14 p.m. From the alley behind the courthouse, a figure stepped forward. Same worn coveralls. Same faded cap. A simple canvas bag slung over one shoulder. Pop. He walked slowly, sweeping the pavement with his eyes instead of a broom this time, as if checking to see what had changed. He passed the bakery, the bench with flowers, the folded notes. He nodded at no one in particular. And then he stopped in front of the SUVs. All 4 doors opened at once. Men in dress uniforms emerged, Navy, Air Force, Army, Marine Corps. Not suits. Not security. Officers. They formed a line in front of the old man. One stepped forward, a tall Marine colonel, medals shining. Sir, he said, snapping to a salute. We've been informed of what happened here. The square froze. I'm not here for a scene, Pop said, his voice gravelly but clear. You didn't ask for this, the colonel replied. But sometimes respect arrives late. And we were told, it's overdue. Pop sighed and looked around. People stared from windows, phones hovering uncertainly in trembling hands. I don't want their pity. They're not offering pity, the colonel said softly. They just finally know who stood watch all these years. The florist gasped quietly. The judge stepped closer. Sheriff Bolton looked as if he'd swallowed a stone. But the town still didn't know. Not yet. Pop simply gave a slight nod and turned to continue walking, stepping past the SUVs as if they weren't there. But that was when the 5th vehicle arrived. And from it stepped someone who did know. Because he wore the same exact cap. Same patch. Same insignia. And he called out, Master Sergeant? Pop stopped mid-step. Slowly, he turned. The square held its breath. If you're outraged, type shame in the comments to stand with those who sacrificed for our country. The name hadn't been spoken aloud in years. Not here, not by anyone in Elmridge. And yet, when the younger man stepped from the 5th SUV, his voice was steady, confident, and filled with something far heavier than surprise. Master Sergeant Riley? He repeated. The old man didn't smile. He didn't flinch. He simply looked the younger man in the eye, gave a small nod, and said, I thought you were stationed in Ramstein. I was, the man replied, approaching. Then someone forwarded a video. You in this square. 3 punks. A trash can. I recognized you instantly. The townspeople leaned in closer, even from across the square. Sheriff Bolton stepped forward. You 2 know each other? The man turned to the sheriff. This man was my instructor at Camp Pendleton. He saved my life during a fire on base in 2003. We were burning off old ordnance. Something went wrong. The colonel stepped forward again. We know exactly who he is. Sheriff Bolton looked confused. You gonna tell the rest of us? The Marine officer nodded slowly, then turned to face the small crowd gathering by the benches and storefronts. This is Master Sergeant Francis Riley, United States Marine Corps, retired. Served 31 years. Afghanistan, Iraq, Desert Storm, 2 Bronze Stars, Silver Star, Distinguished Service Cross. Whispers broke out. One woman dropped her coffee. A man removed his hat and held it to his chest. The florist's assistant gasped. Wait, Riley? The Riley from Firebase Dullet? The Marine nodded. The very one. He pulled out 6 wounded soldiers during an ambush in 2011. Carried them one by one under direct fire. Pop, Master Sergeant Riley lowered his head slightly, his jaw tight. I didn't come here for this. We know, the colonel said. That's why we're here. Riley glanced around. The bakery sign. The flowers. The awkward silence of people who had dismissed him as just another old man. He looked toward Sandy, who stood speechless by her window. I just wanted to keep the place clean, he said. Do something useful. Town looked like it needed a hand. You gave it more than a hand, said Judge Harmon, finally stepping forward. You gave us dignity when we weren't looking. The colonel nodded. We've been instructed to offer formal recognition, but we're not here for ceremony. We're here because every town deserves to know who stands quietly in its corners. Then, gently, as if afraid to offend him further, the Marine reached into his pocket and pulled out a coin, a challenge coin, etched in gold. This is from the Secretary of the Navy. For silent service. Riley didn't move until the younger man, the former trainee, stepped forward and held out something else. A dog tag, mint and scorched. You gave me this the day you pulled me out. Said I'd better live like someone worth saving. The tag glinted in the sun. I've tried, sir. Every day since. Riley took the tag slowly. His hands, finally, trembled. What would you do if your mother was disrespected like this? If you believe respecting those who sacrificed is the minimum we owe them, type never forget in the comments. The moment the dog tag changed hands, the air shifted. Riley didn't speak. His eyes lingered on the bent metal, thumbing the scorched surface with a gentleness that betrayed years of weight. The younger man, Captain Dean Walker now, though Riley still saw the nervous boot he'd trained 2 decades ago, stood tall, chest tight with emotion he didn't dare show. You did more than sweep this square, Dean said softly. You swept shame from it. You swept silence. Riley nodded once, not as acceptance, but understanding. Across the street, a girl climbed onto her father's shoulders to see better. A woman clasped her hands, eyes wet. Sandy from the bakery stepped outside with a tray of warm croissants she hadn't planned to sell. She walked them straight to the Marines. For all of you, she said, voice shaking. And especially him. But Riley didn't take one. He stepped back from the attention and quietly walked to the bench where the flowers had been laid. He sat. Captain Dean followed. You never told me you came from Tennessee. I didn't, Riley replied. I came here after everything. After burying more brothers than I care to count. After trying to live among noise and flash and a country that sometimes forgets. Dean said nothing. I figured if I couldn't serve in uniform anymore, I'd serve in silence, Riley continued. This square was dirty. People passed it every day. No one noticed the trash. So I picked it up. Dean's eyes moved to the crowd, growing thicker now. Town officials, shopkeepers, students. But they noticed the day you weren't here. Riley gave a dry smile. Only because something uglier took my place. The Marine colonel approached slowly, this time holding a document folder. We were asked to present this formally, but we'll leave that to your comfort. What is it? Riley asked. An offer. The Department of Defense is requesting to name a training facility after you. Riley Range in Camp Lejeune. Riley exhaled through his nose. That's not necessary. It's not about necessity. It's about example. Too many young soldiers don't know what quiet strength looks like. We think they should. Just then, the courthouse doors opened. The mayor stepped out, flanked by the city council. No podium, no speech. Just a slow, united walk toward the square. When they reached Riley's bench, the mayor removed his hat. I was one of the kids in this town who thought you were nobody, he said. I never thanked you. Today I do. He turned to the council. I move we rename this square. The council members nodded without hesitation. We propose Riley Square. For the man who kept our town clean and our hearts honest. Dean glanced at his former sergeant, expecting pride. But Riley's shoulders sagged. You don't have to do that. We know, the mayor replied. But we finally understand that's exactly why we should. Riley didn't speak for a long time. The square waited, suspended in quiet. Even the birds seemed to still. The townsfolk watched him sit there, calloused hands resting on his knees, the dog tag nestled in one, and the old broom handle leaning nearby, worn smooth by years of use. "I didn't do it for names or plaques," he finally said. "Didn't do it for medals either. Did it because I couldn't not do something." The mayor nodded. "We understand that now." Dean stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You saved us in more ways than one, Master Sergeant. Maybe it's time we do a little saving too." Riley looked up at him. "That uniform still fits, Captain?" "Barely," Dean chuckled. "But the lessons sure do." Riley turned his eyes toward the square. The garbage had already been picked up. People moved more respectfully now. Quiet conversations, children held close. No music, no yelling. Even the teens who had mocked him were there, at the edge of the crowd, heads bowed. No parents, no phones, no excuses. Just presence. And shame. Riley stood, slowly, like an old machine shifting from park to drive. "Then I'll sweep it one more time," he said. He lifted the broom. The motion was slow but steady, deliberate, not of obligation, but of honor. He walked the path he always had, past the courthouse steps, between the benches, along the bakery wall. No one moved. The crowd opened before him like water parting around a ship. Even the teenagers stood back as he passed. With each step, he tapped the broom gently against the pavement. Not to clean, but to mark it. A quiet beat, like a slow march. Like memory walking through time. When he reached the corner of the square where the flagpole stood, one most people had ignored for years, he paused. Then, gently, he reached into his canvas bag and pulled out a folded flag. Not the standard one flown daily. This was smaller. A combat flag. Worn, faded, its edges frayed from wind and time. He handed it to Captain Dean without a word. Dean took it like he was holding a relic. Riley pointed to the flagpole. "Time to raise the right one." With a solemn nod, Dean moved to the pole. The Marine colonel followed. Together, they unfurled the combat flag and began raising it slowly. People removed their hats. A child placed her hand over her heart. No music played, but there was rhythm in the stillness. When it reached the top, the breeze caught it. For a moment, the flag danced like it remembered what it had flown over. A firebase, a rescue, a life carried on broken legs through enemy fire. Riley stepped back and saluted. It was not the crisp salute of youth. It was slower, heavier, but every inch of it was real. Then he turned and placed the broom gently against the base of the flagpole. If you believe respect shouldn't wear out with time, type respect. The next morning, before the sun had fully crested the hills, Riley was already seated on the same bench, facing the square. No broom in hand this time, just a small thermos of black coffee and a paper bag from Sandy's bakery, steam curling from its folded top. He wasn't alone. The florist's assistant sat beside him, nervous but proud. Across the lawn, a group of local students were quietly raking leaves under supervision from the sheriff's deputies. They had asked to help. Not ordered. Asked. Even the mayor came early that day, his tie askew, hands in his coat pockets. "I was up half the night," he admitted, settling onto the bench next to Riley. "Couldn't stop thinking about how easy it was to miss what was in front of us." Riley sipped his coffee. "You didn't miss it. You just didn't look hard enough." A long pause followed. Then the mayor added, "You'll be getting letters. Calls. The media's caught wind. Someone uploaded footage." Riley didn't flinch. "Let 'em," he muttered. The mayor chuckled. "You're not worried? I've been shot at. I've been left behind. Let them try to make a circus. Truth doesn't wear makeup." At noon, a special session was held on the courthouse steps. Not for ceremony, but for truth. Judge Harmon spoke first. Sometimes, justice doesn't come from courtrooms. Sometimes, it comes when a man walks the same path every day without complaint and reminds the rest of us how to stand up. Next came Captain Dean. He told the story of the fire on base, of Riley's unrelenting determination, and how he'd carried 2 Marines from a collapsing barracks with both arms already burned. "He's why I stand here today," Dean said, "and why so many of us did more with our lives than we might have." Then, a surprise. One of the teens from the previous week, standing awkwardly at the podium, clutching a piece of paper with trembling fingers. "My name's Carter," he said. "I was one of the ones who mocked him. We thought he was nobody. We were wrong." The crowd listened in silence. "I've spent the last few days reading everything I could about Afghanistan, about the Marines, about this town. I didn't know what service meant. Now I do." He stepped away quickly, eyes misty. Riley, from his bench, didn't nod, didn't clap, but he did watch, and that was enough. Later that evening, under a dusky orange sky, Sandy and the florist assistant brought him a gift. A bronze plaque. It was simple. It read, Francis Pop Riley, Master Sergeant, USMC. He didn't ask for thanks. He just showed up. They hadn't asked permission. But Riley read it. And for the first time since the whole thing began, he laughed, deep, warm, and full of something between embarrassment and reluctant pride. Y'all are gonna make me soft. Monday morning came quietly. There were no SUVs now. No uniforms. Just townspeople arriving early, unspoken agreement guiding their steps. They brought coffee, small flags, folded chairs. Some brought nothing but attention, the rarest gift in a busy world. The square looked the same, but it felt different. At 7 o'clock sharp, Riley appeared once again. Not in uniform, not in coveralls. Just in a plain buttoned shirt, sleeves rolled, the same sun-faded cap perched over his silver hair. He moved slower than he had the week before, but his eyes carried more weight and more peace. A young boy tugged his mother's hand and whispered, "Is that the hero?" Riley knelt slightly, enough to be eye level with the boy. "No," he said gently. "Just someone who believes in cleaning up what others leave behind." Then he stood, turned to the pole where the combat flag still waved, and touched the base lightly. Sandy stepped forward, clearing her throat. "Pop," she said, holding out a sealed envelope. "The town wants you to have this. Just a small thank you." He opened it later, alone, under the tree near the bench. Inside was a handwritten letter signed by nearly every shopkeeper, official, and schoolteacher in Elmridge. And beneath it, a simple check marked Lifetime Maintenance Grant. The amount didn't matter. It was the signature line that struck him most. Issued by unanimous vote of Riley Square. Riley folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his canvas bag, right next to the bent dog tag, the combat flag certificate, and a brand new notebook for names and dates. Because though the square had been cleaned, his mission wasn't over. He stayed long after the crowd faded, sweeping a single leaf, tightening a loose bolt on the flag base, straightening the bench. Before leaving, he paused at the edge of the lawn and looked back. Then, without fanfare, he whispered, "Still got work to do." If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let YouTube promote stories of kindness.